The footage doesn't lie. And as of the morning of April 19th, 2026, the Hollywood fairy tale surrounding the Duke and Duchess of Sussex has shifted into what can only be described as a full-scale PR postmortem. As global attention follows Harry and Meghan touching down in Melbourne for their high-pressure Australian tour, new evidence has surfaced revealing what actually unfolded behind the gates of Ted Sarandos' Montecito estate just 9 days earlier. This is a developing investigation into 44 images that were meant to signal success, but instead exposed a striking level of isolation. On April 10th, 2026, Sarandos hosted an exclusive garden gathering to celebrate season 2 of the hit show Beef. The guest list read like a who's who of Hollywood: Michael Keaton, Oscar Isaac, Orlando Bloom, and the evening's featured guest, Carey Mulligan. But once the official Getty Images set, captured by veteran photographer Stephanie Keenan, went live, something unusual stood out. Across 44 professionally shot images, Meghan Markle is seen paired individually with just 2 people: the host himself and his wife, Nicole Avant. In a room filled with A-list talent, that's statistically hard to ignore. In Hollywood, those official photos are more than pictures. They're currency. If you're standing beside Michael Keaton, the camera clicks, sharing a candid moment with Oscar Isaac. That makes the archive. Yet here, the visual record suggests that not a single major star remained beside the Duchess of Sussex long enough to produce a usable image. Before diving further into the moment, Meghan was later accused of inadvertently photobombing her own hosts. Make sure to like and subscribe. This investigation is unfolding rapidly, and you'll want to stay updated, especially with anticipated developments tied to the Australian Federal Police files expected tomorrow. Drop a comment with a receipt if you want access to the full data set regarding the Netflix equity exit. At the center of the Sussex camp's response was one carefully circulated image. Meghan locked in an intense, almost exaggerated embrace with Nicole Avant. To a casual viewer, it read as warmth or solidarity, but within industry circles, it looked more like a public audition for relevance. And this moment didn't occur in isolation. It came just 24 days after a critical report from Variety citing 6 senior insiders at Netflix. One source summed it up bluntly: quite simply, we are done. Another described an atmosphere of fatigue, with executives reportedly worn down by ongoing negativity and a lack of creative delivery. By that account, Meghan wasn't attending to celebrate television. She was there to counter the perception that she had become untouchable. The strategy, sources say, was to secure a high-value image alongside Netflix leadership to quiet speculation of an imminent contract breakdown. But according to one witness, the scene told a different story. Meghan reportedly appeared overly intense, leaning into Nicole Avant in a way that made even the hosts visibly uneasy. Body language analysts later labeled the interaction as an overcompensating attachment display. In elite purse circles, when closeness has to be emphasized that strongly, it often signals the opposite. And there's what some are calling a chartreuse mist. Carey Mulligan, fresh off recognition from King Charles III at Windsor Castle, arrived wearing a distinct chartreuse tone, effectively owning the spotlight that evening. Yet Meghan appeared in a nearly identical shade. One attendee was overheard questioning whether she was attempting to draw attention away from the evening star. Reports suggest organizers grew concerned about potential disruption, and that Harry and Meghan were discreetly asked to exit before the main cast discussion began. So, one insider claimed Prince Harry appeared visibly uncomfortable, allegedly offering quiet apologies to guests over what was described as a breach of event etiquette. He remained mostly in the background while Meghan continued circulating, focused on securing one more meaningful photograph. This wasn't just another industry gathering, it was, by many accounts, an attempt to reshape a narrative already slipping out of control. The photographic record tells a clear story. Meghan may have been present in the garden, but she wasn't part of the inner circle. Hollywood has moved forward. Netflix has shifted direction. And as the Sussexes arrive in Australia, the real question isn't whether they can reclaim their standing. It's how long they can maintain the illusion that those 44 frames didn't say everything. The industry has made its judgment. The Duchess is no longer positioned as a leading figure. She's become an outsider caught in the margins of a partnership that, by many accounts, has already been written off. Stay with us as we continue tracking the Melbourne fallout, because this story is only just unfolding. The visual evidence from that Montecito garden gathering points to something far more deliberate than a simple wardrobe choice. In Hollywood, there's an unspoken rule. You do not, under any circumstances, attempt to overshadow the guest of honor. And yet, on April 10th, 2026, Meghan Markle appeared in a striking chartreuse tone, the exact highly distinctive color worn by the evening's true focal point, Carey Mulligan. This didn't read as coincidence. It came across as calculated, an attempt at visual one-upmanship. To grasp how bold that move was, you have to rewind just 2 weeks. Mulligan, a 3-time Oscar nominee and the leading face of the new season of Beef, had just been honored at Windsor Castle, receiving her CBE from King Charles III. She was firmly in the spotlight, celebrated by the very institution Meghan had stepped away from. By arriving in a nearly identical shade, Meghan wasn't simply dressing to impress. She appeared to be signaling relevance. The message seemed to suggest she still occupied the same sphere as someone currently celebrated on both sides of the Atlantic. But instead of reinforcing that narrative, the move unraveled it in real time. While Mulligan was photographed front and center, flanked by creator Lee Sung-jin and a list, peers like Oscar Isaac and Michael Keaton, Meghan's positioning told a different story. The official images don't show inclusion. They show someone edging toward visibility, trying to secure space within the frame rather than naturally occupying it. One attendee reportedly noted the tension in the air, even suggesting Mulligan didn't arrive until Meghan had already been guided toward the exit. The implication was clear. The evening's central figure had little interest in sharing attention with someone perceived as diverting focus from the celebration itself. This is where body language analysis adds another layer. Expert Judy James reviewed the 44 images and described Meghan's demeanor as exaggerated attachment behavior. She wasn't just present, she appeared to be performing. While Ted Sarandos and Nicole maintained a composed, natural host posture, Meghan's positioning, leaning in, holding tightly, suggested urgency rather than ease. According to James, such gestures can signal underlying insecurity, particularly in environments where social standing is in flux. Conclusion was stark. The perceived value of the Duchess of Sussex title within elite Hollywood circles may have diminished to the point where association is no longer seen as beneficial. Perhaps the clearest indicator lies in what's missing. In Hollywood, alignment is visual. If top-tier talent wants to be linked with you, they stand beside you when the cameras flash. Yet figures like Michael Keaton, Don Johnson, and Orlando never appear alongside Meghan in any of the event's official pairings. Instead, they remained within their own circles, while she appeared to revolve around the hosts, more like an outsider seeking proximity than a peer among equals. The chartreuse outfit, intended to draw attention, ultimately underscored the opposite. Wearing the same color as the evening's centerpiece didn't elevate her presence. It highlighted the divide. Mulligan commanded the room. Meghan, by contrast, disrupted it. As the aftermath of this Montecito episode continues to unfold, one question echoes through Hollywood's inner circles. If even the most influential streaming executive can't position you alongside his A-list guests, what role do you actually occupy in that world? The image of the A-list Duchess is beginning to fracture, and what's emerging beneath it appears increasingly uncertain. Beyond the coordinated outfits and carefully staged smiles lies a deeper structure of influence, and at its base sits a troubling reality. The financial engine behind the Sussex brand appears to have stalled. While public appearances aim to project global relevance, Internal industry data paints a far more severe picture. The first layer of that reality comes from the algorithm itself. By mid-April 2026, internal performance metrics for With Love, Meghan Season 2 had reportedly surfaced. The first season, released in early 25, managed a modest debut ranking of 383 on Netflix. The follow-up, however, has seen a dramatic Arabic scene, Arabique Arabiqual, Arabecta, now positioned around 1,217th globally. That's not just a decline, it's near total obscurity. For a project once framed as a flagship offering, being outperformed by older, lesser-known licensed titles signals a major reputational setback. And the implications go further. On March 6, 2026, a filing reportedly confirmed a significant shift. Netflix formally withdrew its equity stake from Meghan's lifestyle venture. And this wasn't a routine contract ending. It was a withdrawal of capital. When a multi-billion-dollar company like Netflix exits an equity position, the message goes beyond canceling a project. It signals that the brand itself has become a risk. According to insiders, Ted Sarandos ultimately reached a tipping point where the negative attention surrounding the couple outweighed any potential subscriber gains. But perhaps the most damaging layer of this unraveling isn't theoretical. It's tangible. While Meghan was reportedly positioning herself as a high-level executive in Montecito, a report from Variety delivered a blow that echoed across California's business circles. The outlet revealed that Netflix was left holding over $10 million worth of unsold inventory tied to the As Ever brand. Warehouses were reportedly filled with premium lifestyle goods, jams, linens, home items that simply didn't sell. And the image that has lingered since March is particularly stark. These unsold products allegedly ended up on folding tables in Netflix office lobbies, handed out to employees as free giveaways, more like leftover promo items than luxury goods. Consider what that represents. A brand once positioned to compete with figures like Martha Stewart or Gwyneth Paltrow instead became excess stock. When high-end products are reduced to lobby handouts just to avoid a complete loss, the vision of a retail empire has effectively collapsed. This brings us to the mechanism of decline. The pattern is familiar, but no less severe. It starts with financial underperformance, followed quickly by a loss of creative influence. Once funding dries up and investors step back, the only remaining strategy is immediate image repair. That context explains the urgency behind the Australian tour. The trip to Melbourne isn't simply a choice, it's a necessity. With doors in Hollywood reportedly closing, the only remaining stage to perform a version of royal relevance is within the Commonwealth. But as they arrive, a critical question hangs in the air. If the data shows diminishing visibility in Los Angeles, how sustainable is their global relevance? The numbers point to a difficult reality. The financial ledger for the Sussex brand appears deeply in the red, and not in a way that's easily reversed. To understand the sudden shift to Melbourne, you have to look at what insiders describe as the PR reset cycle. This isn't diplomacy or a casual visit. It's a structured four-step attempt to reframe a damaged public image following setbacks in Hollywood. When access to Montecito's inner circles narrows, the fallback strategy is to reposition within the Commonwealth, presenting a form of royal identity no longer active in the UK. The cycle begins with step one, the Hollywood freeze out. As seen during the recent Netflix gathering, the A-list appears to have distanced itself. When established figures like Michael Keaton and Oscar Isaac avoid even a single shared frame, it sends a strong industry signal you're no longer viewed as an asset. That leads into step two. By traveling to Australia, there's an apparent attempt to rewind the narrative to earlier years, leaning on titles and Commonwealth visibility to restore a sense of prestige that has faded in California. But that image is carefully constructed, which brings us to step three, the controlled access illusion. Here, the model becomes more transactional. Reports suggest tickets for Melbourne appearances have reached as high as 3,199 Australian dollars. That's not typical of a charitable or public-facing event. It's a pricing structure designed to curate the audience. By setting such a high barrier, the environment becomes selective, ensuring that those posted create the appearance of demand and exclusivity on camera, regardless of broader public sentiment. Finally, step 4, the security narrative. This is perhaps the most controversial element. By requesting taxpayer-funded police protection for what is effectively a private commercial tour, it creates the potential for political friction. And when authorities decline, it opens the door for a familiar response, framing the refusal as a matter of safety or lack of support. What might otherwise be a logistical decision becomes a headline-driven narrative. However, public response appears to be shifting. The reception in Australia today is not the same as in previous years. As of April 19th, 2026, a petition on change.org has gained significant traction, surpassing 43,000 signatures. The petition reflects concerns from everyday citizens opposing the use of public resources for what they view as a private commercial endeavor. The petition makes its stance unmistakably clear. Australian taxpayers should not be expected to underwrite a couple who have stepped away from official responsibilities. What we're witnessing is the PR reset mechanism playing out in real time. The strategy appears to rely on the appeal of Melbourne and the exclusivity of high-priced venues to distract from a more serious issue, the withdrawal of major financial backing. But as the petition gains traction and tensions around security and funding escalate, the real question emerges: will this carefully staged reset actually restore the brand, or will it end up highlighting the cracks even more? A newly surfaced document reportedly linked to the Australian Federal Police adds another layer to the story. It references a private security arrangement for the Melbourne leg of the trip, and more importantly, raises questions about who is ultimately covering the cost. That detail, if confirmed, may prove difficult for even the most polished PR strategy to reframe. What was intended as a fresh start is increasingly resembling a last attempt to stabilize a faltering image. To understand the urgency behind this Australian visit, you have to examine the tightly packed Arabic scene, Arabic lamb, Arabic scene, Arabic lamb, Arabic tetmarbata of events over the past 44 days. This wasn't random. It unfolded like a chain reaction of professional and social setbacks that brand into a visible decline. The sequence begins on March 6, 2026, when Netflix formally confirmed it had withdrawn its equity stake from Meghan's as Everbrand. This wasn't just a business adjustment. It functioned as a signal to the wider market. When a partner of that scale steps away, it sends a clear message to other investors about perceived risk. The financial cushion effectively disappeared overnight. Just 11 days later, on March 17th, Variety published what has since been referred to as the Six Sources Report. Far from rumor, it was presented as a well-sourced industry assessment. Multiple senior insiders described a breakdown in confidence, with one quote capturing the overall sentiment: "We're done." It pointed to strained creative relations and skepticism about future output. Then came April 10th, the evening of Ted Sarandos' garden gathering. Around 7 at Agatasque 0. Meghan appeared in the now widely discussed chartreuse outfit, engaging in what some observers described as an overly intense display of familiarity with Nicole Avant. It was interpreted by some as an attempt to maintain proximity to key decision makers. However, just a few hours later, a more damaging detail surfaced. By approximately 10:00 p.m., the formal discussion with the cast of Beef was about to begin. Reports indicated that Harry and Meghan had been quietly asked to leave. According to accounts, they exited before the evening's central figure, Carey Mulligan, even took her place. The effort to reestablish footing appeared to have unraveled before the night concluded. Fast forward to April 15th, when a legal development in the UK added another dimension. A defamation case filed by Prince Harry became public through the High Court. In crisis management terms, such actions can function as narrative shifts, redirecting attention away from unfavorable coverage. But in this instance, the focus largely remained on the earlier events in Montecito. Then on April 18th at 8:00 a.m. local time, the Sussexes arrived in Australia. The tone of their arrival, however, contrasted sharply with previous tours. Rather than a celebratory reception, it carried the feel of a repositioning effort. The Australian leg effectively marked the beginning of a broader image reset campaign. The approach seems to rely on optics, leveraging scenic backdrops and curated appearances to counterbalance the headlines surrounding the Netflix withdrawal and the Variety report. But the shadow of recent events, particularly the April 10th exit, continues to follow the narrative. Time, backing, and available platforms all appear to be tightening simultaneously. The arrival in Melbourne doesn't read as a launch point. It feels more like a strategic retreat. And within official circles, particularly among authorities like the Australian Federal Police, a central question remains unresolved. Who is financing the operation behind the scenes? With that, the so-called Melbourne strategy is underway, and the stakes for the Sussex brand are at a critical level. As of April 19th, 2026, global attention is fixed on the intersection between Hollywood perception and Commonwealth presentation. Based on the developments from Montecito to Melbourne, 3 potential outcomes could unfold within the next 72 hours. The first, and perhaps the most severe, is a complete breakdown. In this scenario, the Australian appearances are met with widespread indifference. High ticket prices, reportedly exceeding $3,000 Australian dollars, result in partially filled venues, while the growing petition on change are already beyond 43,000 signatures, translates into visible protests outside key locations. Such an outcome would likely force an early and highly visible return to California, while giving Netflix the final grounds it needs to fully sever any remaining agreements. If Australia ultimately turns away, the question becomes unavoidable. Where does the brand go next? The second, more volatile possibility is the emergence of a controlled crisis. Past patterns suggest that when pressure builds, a security-related narrative often follows. A perceived threat or incident in the center of Melbourne could quickly dominate headlines, shifting attention away from discussions about their standing in Hollywood. It would also allow a return to a familiar storyline, positioning themselves as under constant threat, while potentially setting up a broader legal confrontation with authorities. However, the third scenario, and the one many insiders consider most plausible, is what's being described as the independence test. Observers throughout this tour have noted a shift in dynamics, with Meghan increasingly taking the lead role. She's the one speaking, guiding discussions, and shaping the narrative, while Prince Harry appears more reserved in the background. If audiences respond positively to Meghan as a standalone figure, it could signal a strategic repositioning. The idea, according to some, is to demonstrate to potential high-level investors that she can command influence independently. Should that approach resonate, it may trigger a significant personal and professional shift moving forward. Which brings us back to the most striking detail from the Montecito event. Why were there 44 professional images from the gathering at Ted Sarandos' residence, yet only 2 included Meghan in direct pairings? The implication drawn by some observers is that within those elite circles, association itself had become limited. The Australian visit then is less about leisure and more about narrative reconstruction, a 19-day effort to reshape a story that, in some circles, has already been decided. But a new development may complicate that effort even further. As the Sussexes arrived in Melbourne, a document reportedly linked to the Australian Federal Police surfaced, focusing on the funding structure behind their security arrangements. And it raises a question that public appearances alone can't answer. Who is financing a trip of this scale? If clarity emerges around that issue, it could shift the conversation significantly, potentially creating a level of scrutiny that surpasses even the recent Hollywood developments. More details on that funding trail and what it could mean are expected in the next update. Stay tuned if you want the full picture as it develops.